Welcome to today's show, Discussions with the Writer Fred. And today I plan to continue what I started in my last show, and that's the serious problem that our black communities are having with the police. It's almost to the point where there's an adversarial relationship. And folks, that's not good. That's not good for us. That's not good for the police. And so today, I plan to discuss this with two of our outstanding community leaders who've been deeply involved with the police problem in this city. One who's been on the police commission, and another a young man who's been a leader in our community for years. So stay tuned, because here we go. Welcome to Discussions with the Writer Fred, right here at Black Video News in hot San Antonio, Texas. And of course, the city's hot for more than just the weather reason. It's hot because of what is happening in our streets with all this police brutality going on. And I decided to dedicate this show to the police in San Antonio, the shootings, and I want to talk about, I don't know why they call it a union. I would call it an association. But the union is coming up for a new contract in 2021. And we need to be looking at that contract and having some input into how the mayor and the city council approach it. So I have with me today two of the most outstanding community leaders in San Antonio. One who's been on my show before, and the other I'm glad to welcome on my show. To my right, I have Mr. William B. Johnson, a very community activist who's been involved with the police association and has commented on the union many times before. Then I have another very active young community activist who's been in the news many times in our city, Taj Matthews, who has dedicated himself to helping young blacks who, of course, have a difficult time in life. And he dealt with a number of the shootings that have taken place in this city. So what we're looking at here is, let's just go over a few. Breonna Taylor, shot in bed by the police in Louisville. Rayshard Brooks in Atlanta, shot in the back and killed. And of course, the one that's gotten the most attention is George Floyd, with that policeman's, I use the word lightly, policeman's knee in his neck until he dies. San Antonio has had their number of cases also. We have the Mr. Marquise Jones case. He was shot in the back and killed at 23 years old. And as I recall, Taj, you were involved in that somewhat. Then we had Antroni Scott, 36, shot and killed by the police. And then we had Charles Roundtree, 18, shot and killed by the police. And I don't know if, I've been listening I listened to Trump today, and he's talking about, don't blame all the police officers. We have good police officers. And he went into all the danger they encounter, and he did that whole spiel. Mm-hmm. And I'm listening and thinking, how can we trust the entire police department when this keeps happening? Every time someone's killed, William, they say, it's not the whole police department. Well, something's happening. Something's happening that we need to try to get a handle on. And my biggest concern is this has been going on since I was a teenager. That's a long time ago. Mm-hmm. They just didn't have the cameras to catch it. Now they do, and it's being brought to the attention to everyone. So with you two well-versed individuals, I think it would be good if you give our listeners your pitch on this whole thing. And so let me throw this out to you. Do we blame the police department? Do we blame the union? Do we blame ourselves? Where do we look to try to deal with this problem? And I'll start with you, William.
Okay.
Go ahead.
That's a good question, Fred, to put it that way. I guess in a way, ultimately, we have to look at ourselves and what we have done or not done over the years as part of the mix. However, as citizens in America, we're entitled to the freedoms and all that goes with being a citizen. We pay taxes like everyone else, and the police works for us just like they work for everyone else. But unfortunately, the police coming out of slavery was really put together for one primary reason, I believe. And I believe that reason primarily to keep an eye on us, keep us in check, us being recently freed black folk. And somehow or another, that culture has survived until this very, very day. And that's really what we're dealing with. So I believe the primary blame obviously has to be on the system, if you will. The system being the system that allows police and the strong union, and for them to just go around and killing certain people with impunity. The man had his knee on Floyd's neck. I believe I recall seeing his hand in his pocket. He was just cool and calm and collected.
Yeah.
That tells me something is radically wrong. He knew apparently that the system would know in the world they would get it.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And that's scary and that's dangerous. And now is the time, I believe, we must do something about it. But I think black people, we're in a peculiar situation here. I mean, it's really almost, they purposely, I believe, focus on black men. And it appears to me that they focus on a certain kind of black man. Usually the guy they focus on tend to be a good-sized brother.
Good size?
I think perhaps intimidating to them. I mean, I'm just saying, that's the way it appears to me. And given that, training, an hour or two here and there is not going to do the trick.
No, I don't think
We've got to rid ourselves of these people who do not understand that their job is to serve and protect us along with everybody else.
Okay. Yeah. Taj, you want to take a shot at that?
Well, I mean, I think that we behave shocked a lot of times about what we encounter. There's always been a perception of African Americans in this country, in the world, of what we're about. When you go back to the beginning of this country, you go back to the beginning when the founding of the KKK, that was the behavior that they had. If something happened, someone was accused of a crime, was it rape or murder or anything of that nature, they would come to the home and terrorize the family, and usually take a person off and lynch them or some other horrific crime. So this is something that has always happened in this. It's a part of the fabric of our country. We talk about the flag, we talk about all of these things are together. 50 years ago, Fannie Lou Hamer said, she said it best, what the flag was drenched in. So if we want to talk about this, country is a very unpopular conversation to have. A lot of people don't want to hear it, but this is something that's not shocking. When I became involved with the Marquise Jones case about 5 or 6 years ago.
Can you tell our viewers about the Marquise Jones case?
He was a young man that was here in San Antonio that was killed by a police officer, Robert Encina, who's with the SAPD. He's been an officer there. He's someone that's been protected by that police department and by the city of San Antonio. He was an off-duty cop that was working there at Chacho's, which was over there on Parambata, which was the place that a lot of folks used to go out to eat and have good time. Well, they went through decided that night to go through the drive-thru. He, along with his sister and two other folks, and while they were going through the drive-thru, they hit someone paying attention. They hit the car in front of them. So there was a little dispute that took place, and the management from the restaurant came out along with Encino. they immediately began to address the folks in the car, and there's a lot more to that case than just simply about what happened on that parking lot. But there was my understanding, a glance between Encino and Marquise Jones from previous encounters.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like anybody would, if you feel that you are in some form of danger, you try to remove yourself from it. He got out of the car and ran. Now, from that moment on, that's where the debate takes place. They say that there was there was a gun he was running with, which was proven several times to not necessarily even be true. There's a number of things, but they also used his past that he had been arrested for other crimes.
Didn't he have a warrant?
Yeah, he might. I don't remember, but he may have. But my whole point was I could care less about what happened before that. My concern was what happened on that parking lot that night. And that's where the debate comes in. Encino was a cop with a history. And part of this reason why this contract was so important when the former mayor, Mary Taylor, pushed it through several years ago was because this case was one of those that was protected by that. This officer had a history of sessions of being violent, of having issues with African Americans, dating back to high school. And so it was no secret what this officer was capable of. Now, when it went before the public, it was just presented as if Marquise Jones was this bad apple who, didn't follow the law, was a drug dealer, was all these horrible things. Went on with his family, the same thing. And no one wanted to focus on that particular night, what happened.
What do you mean they didn't want to focus on that night?
In other words,
they wanted to look at his
they wanted to look at the history of him. And everybody has something.
Nobody's perfect. Right.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
But that's the way we always justify things. And so with that, the debate became, Marquise Jones against this good seed cop.
Yeah.
And that was the image that was put out there to the public. And so that became the battle that we saw.
Okay.
Now, my problem that I had was at the time, and I still have to this day, is that we, and justifiably so, Trayvon Martin, with many of the new cases that have come up, we take a lot of our attention and we focus them there. I think that year the NAACP had the Freedom Fund dinner that they have every year, which is a beautiful event. And they had the tea and the Skittles, that's what Trayvon went to the store to get.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And I thought that was a good idea, but we had cases local, and this was one.
Mm-hmm.
And they were giving absolutely no
Attention.
assistance.
Yeah.
And so you had meetings that took place with the DA, meetings that took place with the police, but no one met with that family.
The Hood was supposed to be, I recall when he ran, more of a savior from that last DA, who was bad news.
Yeah.
But Todd, from your standpoint and how he dealt with that case, was he just as bad as she was?
I felt that he, this is someone that I actually took around on the campaign trail twice.
Yeah.
He lost the first time, and that, I had known Susan Reed, for years, and that, we took it to we wanted to change, we wanted to see something happen, but then, I think that Nico's a good person, but at the same time, when it came to that job, that's where our problem came in. I think the desire to want to get in favor with them, I think, probably played a big factor in it, because it was very unreasonable to watch that case and watch the Antoine Scott case. When you watch the handling of both situations, it was just a total unfairness. You know, family found out about everything, even the grand jury decision through the television. No one, they were not given a courtesy call. When we went into a meeting there with him, he looked at the family, and the only thing they could say was, "I'm sorry, we're going to do better with that." And it's like, will you tell someone in that?
Do you think, William? You think we're going to take a break now because I see I'm being signaled by the head. So, but when we come back, William, let's address the union.
Okay.
Why does these unions, like in the case that Taj is talking about, why do they support these guys so? So we'll take a minute break here and come back to you.
Sure.
Stay tuned for more.
1, 6, or a dozen trees. No job is too big or too small. Booker's Tree Services is a certified arborist and state licensed company. On the ground or in the air, we are here to take care of all your tree needs, from stump grinding, tree pruning, tree trimming, tree removal, and much more. Call the professionals to help manage your commercial or residential needs. Don't let your trees make you nervous. Call for a free estimate today at Booker Tree Service, 210-657-8085.
40% of food in America is never eaten.
1 in 6 seniors faces the threat of hunger, and millions more live in isolation.
America, let's do lunch.
Drop off a hot meal and say a quick hello. Volunteer for Meals on Wheels by donating your lunch break at americaletsdolunch.org.
Hello, I'm Tony Hendricks, Chief Operating Officer at Lewis Funeral Home. Lewis Funeral Home has been serving San Antonio and surrounding areas for over 100 years. Lewis Funeral Home's ultimate goal is to help those families in their time of need. If your family is ever in need, please feel free to call us at Lewis Funeral Home, 210-227-7281, or check us out on our website at lewisfuneralhome.com.
Does your life matter? Education, health, and finance can determine your future and explain your past. Pick up the latest edition of Black Life Texas Magazine, a monthly outlook on life with an African American focus. Life is what you make it, so live it in the black.
One in 3 adults has prediabetes. Take the risk test at doihaveprediabetes.org.
Nothing to do this week? Don't miss another event. Go to blacksinsanantonio.com for our event calendar. The home of the largest business directory in San Antonio with an African American focus. Sign up today for our weekly e-blast and text message alerts. Help us make this a better community. Connect, empower, grow.
Back to discussions with the writer Fred right here, Black Video News in San Antonio, Texas. And I'm here with my two prominent guests, Mr. William Johnson and Mr. Taj Matthews, leaders in our community. And when we left off, we're going to move and talk about the unions. And I'd like to preface it this way. Are these unions, we all know about Bull Connors, in what he did in the South. I mean, his was just blatant.
Sure.
Now we're seeing the same kind of treatment of black people by, okay, I'll be careful, specific policemen. But the Bull Connors syndrome comes in that the unions will support these guys. So it might as well be like Bull Connors out there again. And I think our president of the union here is a gentleman by the name of Heller. And from what I understand, you know, there's not ever been a policeman did anything wrong to a black person. So with that in mind, can you discuss the unions? And we know we have a contract coming up. And what should we do? How all the black folks out there in San Antonio, what should we be uniting to do to stop that from happening or getting what we want out of that contract?
You know, I believe San Antonio has approximately 2,200 policemen, and the union represents a good percentage of those. And I'm supportive of unions, generally speaking. However, in this particular case, I find myself not being supported. It's really about power, you know, and influence. We have a situation where that they can endorse and give money to a particular candidate or not. And one thing we can do, we can deal with these candidates who accept these police money.
Absolutely.
Or deal with them harshly.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That can be publicized and the people can know. Secondly, the union must be approved, of course, by city council. They're elected individuals. So if we, the people, really...
Is it the city council that negotiates the contract or the mayor?
Well, when I say city council, I mean mayor and council.
Okay.
I put them together. I don't separate them.
Okay.
However, there are often other people at the table. The city manager may be involved and some other people as well. But basically, the mayor and city council approves the package. In 2017, I think the last package was approved. Ivy Taylor was mayor. And I was against that particular contract, and I went down and testified accordingly. To me, the contract lacked accountability as well as transparency, two very, very important things. And but Ivy, well, you know, she's a nice lady, but for some reason she wanted that contract pushed through, and it was. And here we are with the San Antonio Police Department with no real transparency or accountability for all practical purposes, and that's unfortunate. So we got to hold our politicians' feet to the fire and not be afraid, you know, to do that. That's one thing. Secondly, this union was given the power to bargain by the people. We voted on that a number of years ago. The state, of course, authorized the civil service law, chapter 143 in particular, for firefighters and policemen, but the people voted and said, yes, let them have that right, you know, to bargain with the city. They didn't have to have that right.
Mm-hmm.
So there's a move afoot called Fix SAPD, who I think are putting together an initiative, you know, initiative and referendum.
Right. On the ballot.
We've had some of those in the past, yeah, and so that would give the people an opportunity. But you know what we give, we can take away. So that's interesting in the way that that's shaping up. But I do see our current mayor as somewhat reasonable, considering the talks he's made and his lifestyle and his background is such that he's not a bad fellow. Nuremberg, and the police chief is not all bad, I don't believe. He came down the same year that I left Civil Service Commission, but he's tied by the union. You know, he can't go back more than 6 months to consider action by these guys. If they've done all kind of dirt after 6 months, he can't go back. The union contract has tied him up.
And you can't take past events
right,
problems into consideration.
So it's a heck of a predicament here, but if we have a chance to vote, then we can certainly make our voices heard at that point in time.
Well, let me ask you this, and Todd, you can come in on this too. Do you think Nuremberg's going to be better than what Taylor was?
Well, I hope so. You know, I would hope so. I mean, the future can tell. You know, sometimes you don't really know about these people. I thought Ivy would be a person who would stand up in ways that she failed to do, in my opinion. And I knew Ivy personally. Went to a wedding. I knew Ivy and her husband and family and the whole bit.
Mm-hmm.
But for some reason, she chose to go a way that turned me off, and I was somewhat disappointed with it. But that's just, my particular situation.
How do you feel, Taj? You supported Ivy.
Yeah, I think that many of us, the night that she was appointed mayor, when Castro resigned to become head of HUD, I actually took 50 teenagers down for that to be. It's historical night for San Antonio.
That's good.
And our hope was that we would get some, not so much pro-black or pro. We didn't expect her to be that type of politician or mayor, but we just expected more support of our issues, support of our kids. And I think that we kind of had an incident during that time period because we had a young lady that had been slapped by a police officer. And I went down to go to court with this young lady, and I had spoken with Ivy at home in regards to it. And we were trying to see what assistance we could all come up with as well. And I couldn't get in touch for about 2 days, and that's when the police union, did their endorsement. And so that kind of is where things kind of went where they went there. I think that the current mayor has made some choices that have been very controversial, and he takes chances that are not necessarily political, popular things. And so personally, I have a feeling that this mayor is going to be very, as he has already, going to be very involved in this process. And I think that it's going to, it's not going to be very popular with the police. And that's what it is. My philosophy is majority of the officers that are on the force, they get up every morning, put on their uniform with pride, and they want to go out there and serve. They want to serve the public. The problem is you do have an element, and if you have that element, there needs to be some guidelines in place on handling it fairly. And for years, I've seen it, in my dealings with Chief McManus with the police department, that his hands are tied. No other job can you vote on whether or not your boss is suitable for his position, based on the fact that he doesn't go and do what you say do. So there needs to be change, because if not, we'll have a worse situation here in San Antonio.
Yeah, the union gave the chief a vote of no confidence one time that really kind of shook him.
Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, they're tough.
That's too much power.
It is too much.
Yeah,
and it's not in our best interest as as citizens here.
Well, we'll have an election next year for city council. Maybe that issue should be elevated really high to whoever
it will be elevated. It will be elevated real high. Now, the challenge that you're gonna have is when you get to some of the other areas of town. The more urban areas will, of course, we won't change. But when you get to many of these other areas, and when you read the comments and logs of people from these other areas, there's a lot of pro police, support. And that's where we get lost at, because none of us are saying we're against the police. Even the defund confusion, they've been able to confuse people with that and say, oh, they want to defund the police. When it's not saying that, it's saying that, if we cannot have more of a end with the policies of the police, then, why should our funds, go and help, promote and do those different things that they're doing.
I guess what I'm saying is that contracts coming up in 2021.
Correct.
the council races in 2021. Now, we need to be proactive
Sure.
and not reactive.
Sure.
Whoever is running for office, number one, if the vote is before the election, then the present city council person should be put on notice
Yeah.
that here's what we're looking for you to do, and if you don't do that, we're not going to back you.
That vote doesn't take place until I think it's around September.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's-
Well, on the contract.
Yeah.
September next
Oh,
year.
good. So that now the city, District 2 lays out what they're looking for. One of the big things, and I think other people have mentioned it, I'm on the board. I can really, I'm sworn not to talk about what happens in specifically, but in general, and I'm not the first one who said this. I think John Sanders said this last week. The board needs subpoena power.
Yeah.
The board needs subpoena power. You're a paper tiger without subpoena power.
Yeah, I know.
You can't force an officer to come in, and I don't know what they're going to do. I don't know what they're going to do about the union being able to negotiate down the charges against these guys. You all know that happens.
Well, part of that is the state law, civil service law, but this union, even when I was on the Fire and Police Civil Service Commission, I was there 9 years, a little bit better. I determined for myself that some changes were in order. See, the union has a choice to go before arbitrator, when they have charges against them, or come before the Civil Service Commission. And they always chose the arbitrator. And of course, the arbitrator cost them a little money, cost the city a little money. But they could come before the commission as well. Commission made up of 3 of the local citizens. They could have come before us as well, but they never did. I think one time I recall them coming before the Civil Service Commission. So what needs to happen, the contract needs to be drawn up in a way that will require them to have X percentage of the hearings before the commission, and then X percentage before arbitration, perhaps. I mean, so that's one way to force them to be heard by that commission. I'm assuming they got a commission down there similar to what we were.
Well, let me say this. We're about running out of time.
Okay.
You two gentlemen should be out in the lead on this issue for whoever's running for office. I'm serious. You have to represent our people who don't know.
And not just District 2.
I'm about to say, I'm going to live all over town. Yeah,
No.
no.
We know where we have our power. We don't have our power in District 8. We have it here in District 2. Okay? What we could best try to do is counter through getting the right person in office who will be a counter to the conservative in office.
I understand.
But we can't have someone who's going to go along with the conservative.
I know
That's the point I'm making. I hear what you said, Dodge. And I hear what you said.
Yeah, that's one person, though, and I don't want to see us put all our eggs in that one basket. I really don't.
You don't have an effect on the voting in District 8.
Well,
point. You have control here.
I understand.
And I think you should.
Okay.
You should. I mean, you can do it the other way,
But
but
certainly focus on it.
You got to look at the priorities of others. Because you now have a lot of the Mexican American leadership locally. You've had longtime people like Maria Berenzalo and Rosa Castro and all those folks. They want change. You've got Ray that was councilman on the
What's Saldana?
Yeah, Saldana.
Yeah.
You have all those folks. So there's a lot of people that
Ray Saldana.
Well, don't we go ahead, I'm sorry.
So we got to go across the board. We got to reach out.
Okay.
Yeah.
Don't we unite with them?
Well,
in
there
this?
are times when we certainly can.
And this is the issue we have to.
Who want to succeed?
This is to me. This is a major local issue.
Yeah, it is, no question.
And the opportunity, I think it's great that the person who will be elected will be there before the contract negotiations and the vote. So But that said, let me allow each of you gentlemen to take maybe a minute and say where are we, what we need to do, and how we move forward. Go ahead.
Well,
let me start with Taj.
All right.
Start with you.
Sure.
Go ahead, Taj.
I think that to experience some of the things that I've experienced over the last couple of years, teaching and talking hope for change. There's got to be more of an organized effort. I think we talked about the Marquise Jones case. I was talking with his aunt recently after a while. And one of the things that we all had to come away with is that there's got to be organization to mobilize people to get out to support and also to get out to vote. This union contract that is that's being talked about now, there needs to be more of a effort to get that information out so that people understand what their rights are, because they don't understand that their rights are not really valid. When you look at the whole scope of things, the officers have a situation where they can walk away from each of these charges. So I think we need to there needs to be more of an effort to get people together. We've got to hold people accountable, and not just our elected officers. We have organizations, the NAACP. I love the NAACP. I've been a member of the NAACP my whole life. I've been an officer in the NAACP. But we cannot allow private meetings that happened during that era. We cannot allow a non-service. We have to. All these groups have to come together. And if we come together, that's how we are able to get this done. And in volumes of people, that's how this effort is solved. Okay. But as long as we, continue to work separately.
Okay. Gotcha. Mr. Johnson.
When the young cadets become policemen, they swear to a code of ethics. And I suspect many of them do that in good faith. I've attended those ceremonies, made some talks, shook the hands of the guys and such. They seem to start off ready to do the job in accordance with the way that they've been taught to do it. But along the way, something happens. Therein lies the rub. That culture somehow gets to them, the best of them. Because all of them, they don't start off bad. I've seen them. I understand that. So somehow or another, we got to get a handle on what happens to them. I guess kind of like the military. You go to the military, you learn certain things in tech school and such, and you get out there on the job, and these sergeants can kind of tell you, now this is the way we really do it, kind of thing. This is not, So having been in the Air Force, I can sort of relate to that. Another thing though that's important to me, you notice I don't call policemen officers. I choose not to. I know what an officer is, or what an officer represents. That's someone who has conducted themselves in a way that they weren't being called officer. I call them policemen, call them cop, law enforcement. But officer, no, they're not officers in my opinion. So let's as a people understand that, and let's view them as our hired help. We pay their salaries. So let's mentally at least have that in mind. They're not our bosses, we're theirs technically. I mean, if we can think that way and believe that, I think we can deal with police in a way that we haven't been doing, because they work for us. Their job is to serve and protect us. This thing about you didn't follow his command, what's that about? An officer gives command, but I don't see him as an officer, so therefore he can make a suggestion. But I think we give him too much play, too much rope, if you will, when we bow to this thing of this officer, and I'm supposed to be in awe almost of him. But it's a big subject for him, and hopefully we'll finally get it together. But we got a ways to go yet as a people here in San Antonio.
Well, thank you, gentlemen. I want to say to you all, Taj, if there is a case that comes up and you need the exposure, please call me. Mm-hmm. Kyle Booker has made this show available to you to go to the public. All right. Communication is key.
It is.
And this brother's doing some great things.
That's good. I'm delighted by it.
And I want to thank both of you all for being on the show today. And I want to close by in a different way.
Okay.
I want you all out there to know there is a civilian review board that's available to you.
That's good.
You need to know that.
That's good.
I'm on that board.
Mm-hmm.
And so instead of taking on that policeman at 2 o'clock in the morning,
Mm-hmm.
where he's got all the power,
All right.
get his badge number.
All right.
Call Internal Affairs.
Absolutely.
And if you don't get what you want from Internal Affairs, call me.
Yeah, that's good.
And I'll take you up to Internal Affairs. But by God, don't fight that cop. Let us fight him for you.
Good.
Stay within the system.
All right.
Because we can't keep losing our kids. We can't keep losing our kids. And I can assure you, that big bad cop out there, when he comes behind that board, is not as bad as he is on that street. So please, contact the Internal Affairs. Tell them you have a complaint. They'll bring you in. They'll listen to it. They'll write it out. And I guarantee you, those guys in IA don't want bad cops.
Mm-hmm.
And they do a very thorough job
Okay.
of investigating. And then you'll get your chance to come in, tell your story to them, to the board, your friends, okay? Your friends. And finally, I want to say, I think Chief McManus' heart and thinking is in the right place. Is in the right place. We just, but he can't do anything if you're going to fight the cops on the street. You can't do that. Man, don't try to take that on. That man's got a gun.
Right.
And he's got the authority to use it. So it makes no sense. So I'm just, my final word is remember, Civilian Action Advisory Board, Internal Affairs. You can call the police department. They'll put you right in touch with them.
Amen.
And amen. And so I want to say this is Discussions with the Writer Fred, as usual, telling our story, our way.
All right. Very good.